Thank you very much, Raul. Thank you. You know, my friends, it's been a long time since we've started sending this message to everyone. And sometimes people might hear it, sometimes people might not hear it. But there's one thing that every single person on earth needs to hear. It's the fact that the people who have sacrificed the most to achieve world peace are now suffering the consequences of that sacrifice, are now being abused by the nation that has sacrificed the most peaceful people to achieve the wars that they have desired. My friends, the Ukrainian people have given up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world, in the biggest nuclear demilitarization in human history, in the Budapest Memorandum. This was done years ago, and Russia had promised to respect Ukrainian sovereignty back then. This promise was repeated once again in the Ukraine-Russia Friendship Treaty. Russia has broken these promises. Russia spat in the face of the desire for world peace that the human beings on this earth share. Russia is the enemy of humanity, not just the enemy of Ukraine, not just the enemy of the free world. Russia is the enemy of world peace. Russia is the enemy of a future. Russia is the enemy of life itself. They have been saber-rattling their nuclear weapons ever since this war began, ever since they have started this war. And every single time that they escalate this war and face the consequences from the Ukrainian heroes, they once again bring the same point of the nuclear weapons to play. I watched a very interesting documentary just a few days ago about whether or not the Russian nuclear weapons even work at all. And that is something pretty funny, because Russia has every single encouragement to lie about the abilities of their nuclear weapons. The Russians have not been using up almost any money to maintain their nuclear weapons. Why is that? Well, because nobody can simply waltz in the Russian stockpiles of nuclear weapons and check out if they're still functional or not. And at the same time, Russia maintains the ability to blackmail the whole world, claiming, oh, but if you don't behave yourself, if you don't allow me to act in the genocidal way I please, I'm gonna nuke you. They've been getting off the hook with this for a very long time now. They've been getting away with it. However, my friends, once again, whether their weapons work at all or not is a big question that may have a likely answer of no. But the main thing that people should consider is that the best deterrent against the Russian terrorist regime and their potential use of nuclear weapons is not appeasement. In fact, appeasement is the worst deterrent against anything that the Russians might want to do. The best deterrent is the fear that they have of immediate and overwhelming retaliation from the West. And with every single limp-wristed move that the West does, that the West commits itself to, the Russians get bolder. The Russians decide, okay, so they're not planning to do anything at all. They don't think Ukraine is worth it. Then maybe, just maybe, they will start sending tactical nuclear weapons to blow up Ukraine. Maybe they will start using it to blow up their own lands in Suja, if they're not capable of getting the Ukrainians out of that. Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's another interesting thing in the Russian mentality nowadays. You see, they claim that they have the right to invade Ukraine and do as they please with the Ukrainian people. But the Ukrainians, after they invaded Suja, no, they're not allowed to do that. What? Only the Russians are allowed to invade Ukraine. The Ukrainians are not allowed to retaliate. That's the funny part. You see, the Russians have been laughing at Ukraine for years. Oh, you got a comedian president. Well, I guess they have a whole nation of comedians now, because they most certainly don't see how much of a joke they've become. Second world power. What a joke. Second strongest military in Russia, maybe. And that's just a maybe. My friends, it can sometimes be difficult to comprehend what kind of atrocities the Russian terrorist regime is committing in Ukraine. But we must not forget that the proof of these atrocities is overwhelming. And we're not only talking about atrocities in Bucha, in Irpin, in Olenica, and many other places. We're not only talking about that. We're talking about the systematic torture that the Ukrainian prisoners of war face when they are captured by the Russian terrorist regime. We're talking about systematic violations of the Geneva Convention. A few days ago, there's been news that the Russians have been escalating their use of chemical weapons all over the front line. They're getting desperate, you see. They're trying to see if there will be consequences after they use chemical weapons. And if there won't be any consequences for them, guess what they will do next? They will decide, oh, maybe, just maybe, we can start using a small little nuclear weapon in Ukraine. I mean, if they can violate the Geneva Convention by torturing prisoners, if they can violate the Geneva Convention by using chemical weapons, then what's preventing them from using nuclear weapons too? Nothing. My friends, if you're facing off against a psychopath who's not afraid of you and who's not afraid of any consequences to his actions, you bet you'll be in for a very terrible time facing off against him. Because you're facing a very dangerous and violent person who's completely unafraid of any backlash that any of their actions might have. This is why it's so important to have punishment in any society for the crimes that people commit. This is why we need laws to rule societies. This is why we need order. But the Russian terrorist regime spits in the face of laws. The only law in Russia is the rule of the strong. And by the strong, I don't mean the athletes, I don't mean the physically strong. By the strong, I mean the oligarchs. By the strong, I mean Putin. And of course, my friends, we must not forget about the massive casualties on the civilian population that have happened, that have been caused by the terrible actions committed by the Russian terrorist regime. So my friends, for those who have died, for those who have suffered, for those who have been mutilated for life, and for those who continue to suffer right now, I'd like to ask you to do a minute of silence. Thank you. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
It can